Morning, Darren.
Good morning. Now I'm unmuted. How are you?
Pretty good, and you?
Good.
And is that Chris who just joined?
That's correct.
How's it going?
Good.
Guess we'll give people a couple minutes to get resettled after the faculty meeting, so probably start
Sure.
at 9:45. I think that should be enough time for. Hopefully the agenda isn't that long unless people have a bunch of questions. Morning, Scott.
Hello.
How's it going?
All right, how are you?
Pretty good. Hola, José, ¿cómo estás?
Well, since Scott's here, I'm gonna go head down to Ben's meeting.
Okay. All right. Thanks, and good luck. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. A brief outline I have on the screen of what I hope to get over about AP classes and considerations for this extraordinary event is to, one, give a little background on AP exams, the AP timetable for score release, reading, the different types of forms when those are graded, and then the AP update that they released last week. And largely from that, probably from my experience as a table leader and question leader and working with them for 19 years, go over what I think ETS and College Board is likely to do, and more importantly, what they're unlikely to do. There's some things that they mention that sound nice, but I think are impractical and are probably just covering their butts. I go over some parts of AP Central. Hopefully all of you have had your students sign up for that if you have AP. They made a couple of changes to that recently, such as having available a lockdown browser for certain parts of the exam for the students to download so that they can't go to any other sites, And as well, they announced an exam release later this month for every subject so that there'll be a full practice exam available. So that's sort of my outline of what I wanted to go over, and then feel free to ask any questions or make any suggestions you may have. So first, the AP timetable. The AP exam, the College Board and ATS plan to release scores normally the first or second week of July. So everything works backwards from that. So in order to have the scores released to students and teachers and universities by early to mid-July, then the gradings normally take place from the beginning of June to, this year it'll be from June 1st until June 18th. Many of those, to prepare for those, are actually doing pre-readings the end of the month. So realistic, right around Memorial Day and after, many of the sites will start actually doing pre-readings and setting up and organizing for the gradings. For the APs for the last couple of years, all of the exams have some on-site grading. Largely, the larger essays are all graded in one site around the country, where they bring in people from all over to grade it at one time over 1 week. Some smaller sections, such as in the languages, the speaking sections, and in some other exams, these short responses, are now being done through what they call online distributed scoring, so that teachers around the country can do it online from their homes. Again, all of these take place during the same time as the regular reading, because they use the same question leaders and table leaders to do benchmarking, coming up with recommendations for why certain responses should receive a certain score, and also to be available. They have sort of online table leaders to answer questions and do training to be available. Also for the AP, there are different forms. Not everybody takes the same exam. The standard exam is the O form, or the operational exam, which the vast majority take. But then they also have an alternate exam. Then there is also the exceptions exam. And then sometimes they have experimental exams that they may test for other sections for later years, or for time zone differences, and occasionally an international exam. So during the grading, most graders do the operational exam, but there's a small group, normally 1 or 2 tables, that may handle special exams, and the question leaders themselves normally deal with exceptions and special grading. One of the reasons I bring that up is that there are some exams that don't get graded during that 1 week period in June, that may get graded in July or August, but those are normally done by a select group of readers or the question leader themselves, and the students may not get their grades because of that until August, September, or even later. Now, the reason I bring all of that up is that AP has said that they are heavily recommending that teachers and schools give the testing during the regular testing days. However, they are saying that they may make available some testing for the 4th week in May for some schools that they requested specifically, and there may be some testing in July. Now, my gut tells me that while that may be possible, it's going to be heavily discouraged. And even if the students are in schools are allowed to do that testing, scores aren't going to come out for those students until August or September. So they may not get college credit or reporting back. So while the College Board is trying to sound as if they're doing a lot and trying to do as much as possible, realistically, by their time crunch schedule, they want to have as much graded, and they only have the personnel to get things graded through most of June. So they're really probably going to try and heavily suggest that schools stick to the traditional testing schedule. If not, scores may not be available for months until the end of the summer. First, any questions on sort of that background update? So the College Board is saying they're going to be flexible, and there will be some flexibility. But my experience, and I think based off of their own timetable for releases and for universities, there's only so much flexibility that they have. Okay, no questions? Okay, hopefully all of you are familiar with AP Classroom. And this was an initiative launched this year for the first time where students have available to them activities, and most importantly, I think for me that I've been using are the personal progress checks, where they have choice of multiple choice questions and free response questions based almost exactly off of what they would find on the test. Many of the courses are divided into different units. In the modern languages, they're divided into different themes such as family and society, personal and public identities, beauty and aesthetics, science and technology, um, contemporary challenges, and um, and community and society. Once you set up the classroom, you could have given your, or hopefully you have given your students a code where they self-register. And then once they've self-registered, you can assign different activities topics or the self-check. The College Board also announced that they are going to be releasing this month a full exam for the students. Either it could have been done in classroom in the print, but they also have now an online version available for it. So for us, sometime at the end of the month, you will have available the possibility of assigning a full practice exam besides the one that was available through AP Audit to all of the students as a practice for the exam. They also announced that they were releasing a secure online lockdown browser so that you can set up so that the students can only do certain parts of the exam through the specific browser. In order for that to work, you would have to instruct your students to download the browser. There's a link that there are links that are available on that AP Classroom, or if you set up that activity, the first thing the students will see is a warning saying they have to download this browser, then download it on their individual computers, and then while they're working on that section, they'll only be allowed to stay in that browser and not be able to access Google or some other sites offside. They also have ways for it could be set up by school-owned computers, but for most of our students, they would be using the option where they would be downloading it themselves. So that's an option if you are worried about security or concerns for students. And one of the things that the College Board made available more recently in the last couple months for more secure practice to try and create a more authentic testing experience for the students. Largely the biggest things I wanted to bring up is that while the College Board and ETS are obviously trying to deal with this with as much flexibility as possible, my gut tells me there's only limited flexibility, that they're still going to try and get as many students in schools to adhere to the preordained testing schedule, because the reading schedule has been set for at least a year and the scoring schedule. And so they're under a crunch to get scores released as early as possible. If there is late testing, that would obviously mean a delay in scoring and releasing. And realistically, they probably would not be able to score those late exams until probably August, meaning students in schools wouldn't receive scores until September or possibly October. So because of that, they're heavily emphasizing the availability of AP Classroom, things that are available on there for practice and checking and modifying student progress, which I hadn't used much in the first semester. I've started using more. The students seem to like it, and it's helpful and gives me some important feedback. But again, it's no substitute for actual classroom, but it's all we've got right now. Questions or suggestions, comments?
Milton, it's Darren. I've got a question. Can you hear
Yep.
me okay?
I hear you great.
Great. The AP Latin test is based mostly on a set of readings, which are given by the AP curriculum setters. And with interruptions to class meetings like this, it makes it very unlikely that any school that's in our situation would be able to cover all of those lines in the number of meeting days we actually had in the school year. Do the AP folks, in your opinion, have any ability and inclination to limit the curriculum to something smaller than it was when they first set it for
Uh,
this exam?
Great question. My response would probably be no. Each AP exam has a development committee that writes all the tests and all the versions of the tests. And as I said, every year there are at least 2, sometimes 3 or 4 versions of the test that have to be created and piloted, tested, and vetted by the College Board and ETS to make sure that they're psychometrically valid and go through all of their equity and standards and testing standards. So all of the exams are normally written at least 1 or sometimes 2 years ahead of time. And then they're putting schedules in other, so the exams would have been written at least a year, if not 2 years ago, probably printed off sometime last year. So realistically, there's probably no way they can make any adjustment and say, hey, we're not going to test this part because the exams have already been written and printed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Milt.
Yes.
Hey, so what's so if any of our students ask, what's the Ignatius plan going forward? Like, are we still saying we're going to do it during the regular week? Because the late exams are during our semester exams.
Right.
What should I tell kids about what we're going to do?
Actually, no, great. I have no idea. I guess we would have to contact Roger about that, or Roger, or Casey, or Drew. Yeah, I don't know.
Right now, governor just said in a news conference interview yesterday. He said he
Right,
pretty
he
much
would be surprised that if we
pretty
came
much
back at the end of the semester at all. So yeah.
So I mean, are we gonna? Should we say we can make it optional if we're gonna do it early or the regular time, or?
I don't know. My gut tells me that the AP is probably going to discourage late testing, and then for us, as you said, because of our exam schedule and then getting kids back in the last week in May or much less in June makes it unlikely. So we may end up pushing for one of those, but my gut tells me we're probably going to stick to the more traditional testing schedule.
All right, it's just kind of hope for the best on our scores.
Right.
All righty.
Now, one of the things about the score, AP scoring is, particularly on the multiple choice, they repeat questions that they on different exams from year to year, what they call equating questions, so that they try and make sure that a student of a certain ability level 5-10 years ago would get and a student today would have comparable scores. But the exams are, in a sense, sort of graded against each other. So in a year like this, where large numbers of students are sort of at a disadvantage, that is going to be taken into consideration with the benchmarkings. That when they look at the beginning of each reading, there's a pre-reading where the free response questions, where the table leaders and question leaders go through different exams, look at what they have for that year, and then try to come up with for that year what they think is the typical 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or whatever the grading scale is for that question. So each year the responses are sort of graded against each other for that. So while the multiple choice, there isn't a whole lot of leeway, that's very strictly governed by the equating questions, the free responses are sort of graded on a year-to-year basis in competition to each other. So almost all the students are going to have the same disadvantage. So the grades are, so everybody's going to be at a disadvantage. No one will have an advantage. If that makes sense.
I mean, not every state's shutting down
Right.
all their schools, so that could be an issue too. So I don't think they can divide up. This is the half that's affected by coronavirus. This is the half that's not. I mean, obviously that's the guys that make the big bucks are going to figure that out. But
right, but it's also statistically they want a particular number of 5, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s. Right. And so when I was question leader, there were particular things each year where some readers or people would go like, this isn't as good a quality as last year or another year. Well, so what? You need to have about 20% 5. So even if it isn't as good as you would have thought, that's going to be a 5 for that particular year. So yeah, they can't necessarily and wouldn't know who's coming from what area, but they're probably going to see a decrease in quality. So what experienced readers might have thought was a 5 or a 4 from previous year, or 3 in a previous year is probably going to be a 4 this year, or potentially a 5. So they're going to change the they won't change the standards per se, but they're going to push on the readers. They're going to change the expectations of what to expect for a student this year or a particular year. That a little bit clearer?
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense. I know it's we're all kind
I
of.
know when I was in question, that's sort of the big thing. They try not to have people, if they were graded from year to year, think back to the previous year and compare to others, that it needs to be for that year. And so I'm sure they're going to make a very big deal of what is excellent, or what is demonstrating excellence, or what is good or fair or weak or poor for this year is going to be different from probably other years, and making a very good point of they try to say don't penalize students for what they don't do, give them credit for what they do, and they're going to be really going out of their way to give them credit for what they have done this year, perhaps more in previous years.
Okay.
Oh, hi Tara, how's it going? I didn't know you kind of jumped in. Tara, did you have any questions or comments or suggestions? For being a experienced reader yourself. Did you hear me? Oh. Oh, well. Oh, that's about all that I had. Did anybody else have any other questions or concerns or suggestions? Like I said, I think in the reading and other things, they'll try to be as flexible as possible on that, but I think that they are pretty much going to be constrained by the actual scoring calendar as to what they can do. So I think there'll be extra considerations given for free responses, but yeah, they can't realistically change the exam at this point. And there probably is only a limited number of tests that they can potentially grade or send to question leaders and table leaders for late grading in July or August. So they're probably going to try and convince and funnel as many schools and districts into taking using the standard testing window as humanly possible. Well, if there's nothing else, if you have any questions, again, feel free to email me or ask, or let me know. I'll be happy to help however I can, or any suggestions. And if you guys have any suggestions or come up with any ideas, feel free to share them with me or John or the faculty or anybody.
Great. Thank you, Milton.
Well, thank you. I hope this helped.
It does.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Milt.
Well, have a good morning.
You too.
Later.
Bye.